And howdy, and welcome to Of Goths and Goblins, the show where we talk about monsters, both real and imaginary. I'm who you're gonna call DeLaney. Emma, please make a goblin noise. Thank you, Emma. Today, we're gonna be talking about a franchise that I've been hyperfixated on since I was about 10. And so today, we're gonna be talking about the Ghostbusters.
Woot woot!
Woot woot! And so I'm gonna be doing something a little different in this episode. So instead of the long and very well thought out, big air quotes there, instead of the long, potentially thought out script, I'm thinking that I'm just going to have a bullet list of things and I'm going to have a more casual, candid conversation about this. So maybe this episode is going to be really hard to follow, but maybe it'll be more interesting. So with the addition of that, I'm going to be apologizing in advance for the length of this episode because I can feel that it's going to be really long.
It's alright, I'll just say, move on. We're done with this.
You just cut me off. Just be like, no, we're done. We're not talking about...
You're done.
You're done. We're not talking about the People Busters. No, it's not something that's happening. So, before we get into tangent territory, I am going to be laying out some mad facts, dog.
Alright.
So, the first Ghostbusters film came out on June 7th, 1984. And it was written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. And it was directed by Ivan Reitman. Before the movie came out, most of what we understand as quote-unquote ghost law, for lack of a better term, didn't really exist. And so most of this ghostly lore wasn't really in the popular zeitgeist because there wasn't really a need or a want for it. And so, enough with quote-unquote facts. Ghostbusters.
Just looking over your shoulder and your use of zeitgeist.
Is that wrong?
Tell me what you think zeitgeist means.
So the zeitgeist is like the popular knowledge where it's like everyone kind of knows about it.
Close enough, I suppose.
Well, what does it mean then?
It's like that, but it's more along the lines of it's the defining quality of something. Like the zeitgeist of 2020 would be COVID.
Yeah, and the zeitgeist of the knowledge of popular knowledge is that Ghostbusters...
Use knowledge one more time in there, please.
The knowledge of knowledge and the knowledge of knowledge and the knowledge, and the thing about the knowledge is that the knowledge goes knowledge. And the knowledge of ghosts.
I don't think anyone was following you there.
I was. That's all that matters.
Alright.
So, Ghostbusters starts as Peter Venkman. Bill Murray is sitting there and he's like, hey, I'm a doctor, right? Dr. Venkman. And he is a paranormal researcher along with Egon Spengler, the ever so attractive Harold Ramis. That man is attractive. And Ray Stantz. And together they are this paranormal researching division at this college. And so Peter Venkman is sitting there and he's holding up cards for these two people. There's a dude who kind of looks like, what's his face? That dude from Glee.
I haven't seen Glee.
He gets really excited when they're singing Britney Spears and he grabs some dude's ass.
I haven't seen Glee. I can't help you there.
That was a formative moment in my childhood. Anyway, that guy from Glee who grabs that one dude's butt when they're talking about Britney Spears. He looks like him. And then this hot blonde lady. Right, and they're both sitting there at this table and they're like, yeah, so we're just going to have you guess some things that are on this card, and if you get it wrong, zip zap.
Electrocution.
And so they are testing the effects of negative reinforcement on telekinetic abilities. And so the way that this is set up in the movie is like, oh, this is a big joke. He's just trying to get it with the hot lady. Because every time that the hot lady, guesses something, whether she's right or wrong, he says that she's right. And every time that the dude says something, he's wrong. And so, as it progresses, the brain goes, okay, yeah, he's just trying to impress the hot lady to get to talk to her. But then we see in the last card when he's like, okay, and then what's this one? And it shows 3 squiggly lines on it. And the dude goes, I don't know, 3 squiggly lines? And Dr. Venkman goes, oh, sorry, that's wrong, zip zap. And then the dude just gets really mad. And, like, that's the joke, seemingly. And I think that what we're being shown here in this moment is that Dr. Vinkman and the rest of the paranormal researchers are onto something here, right? And that is your first little dip into the paranormal world of Ghostbusters. And so it's just like dipping your toe into the pool before just diving head first, because after that moment, Ray barges in and is like, hey, we gotta go. Some library just called us.
Got a live one.
We got a live one. And so they go to this library, and one of my favorite jokes, right? I have listed here in my bullet points somewhere down here at the bottom some of my favorite jokes from Ghostbusters. This is one of them. It's when Egon is like, has his little stethoscope in, and he's like listening to under a table. Not entirely sure what's happening there. But then, yeah, he like walks up, Dr. Vinkman, and starts like tapping on the table, and Egon's like, excuse me?
What is this?
What's going on here? And then Dr. Vinkman just grabs a big old book and just slams it down on the table. And
That scared me so much.
oh, I'd die. But then we go down into the basement. Second favorite joke. Freaking love Ghostbusters, man.
I know, I can
love
see
it
that.
so much. And so we go down to the basement, and there's this big stack of books in the middle of an aisle. And I forgot about the cold open. There's a cold open. Ghosts. But that's about it. Library ghosts. But in the basement, there's like this stack of books, and Ray says something along the lines of some ghosty science term that I don't exactly remember. But then Vinkman goes, yes, no human being could have possibly stacked books like this.
No, never.
Oh, I love it so much. Okay.
Take a breath. Think about what you want to talk about next.
So then they see the library ghost, and it's a fully formed, vaporous, full-body anomaly, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of long words. And this is where Dan Aykroyd and his knowledge of ghosts really comes into play, because Dan Aykroyd, one of the writers of Ghostbusters, comes from a very long line of spiritualists, right? And so, like, his father, his grandfather, his mother, they all were very big in the spiritualist movement, and his father even wrote a book and stuff on, like, spirituality and ghosts and stuff. And so all of these things are, like, coming directly out of this book. And so that's what I mean when I said earlier that, like, there's a lot of things that we understand about ghosts now that are just common knowledge that wouldn't be common knowledge unless Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like ectoplasm. Even, like, something as simple about ghosts, like ectoplasm, is, like, something that we didn't even really acknowledge as a thing until Ghostbusters came out, and there's goop on the library cards, and it's kind of icky, but
Kind of. It's disgusting.
it's real icky.
They called it snot, and I didn't like that at all.
Yeah. It's gross. You are correct. But Ghostbusters. So then they see the fully formed, full-body apparition. And this is the library ghost. And in the Ghostbusters video game, we find out that she has a whole backstory about how she was murdered by a dude who she thought was going to be like the love of her life. He was actually a dude who was after a lot of really nice, fancy old books. He was called the Collector. And if you have a name, you know you're a terrible person.
Exactly.
Any name.
If you have a name.
If you have a name.
Barb.
Barbara.
Awful.
Coming for you, Barbara.
Wouldn't that make you the awful person then if you're coming for someone?
No. No, Barbara. If you're out there. Fuck you. I keep saying the no words. God. So,
Damn it.
this
We're gonna have
episode.
to rate this episode as explicit.
They're all explicit, Emma. We have never had a non-explicit episode. Okay.
This one has swear words though.
They all do. We're terrible at it. We have a whole list. We have a list of no words, and we've said every single one of them. God.
Have we said shit yet?
Well, now we have. Thanks, Emma. Okay, so she's the collector.
Shit, the collector.
Shit collector.
Yeah, he's not very good at it.
Oh, he's just a plumber.
Okay. Let's get back on track. The
So,
collector.
the library
Murders-
ghost is murdered by the collector.
Yes.
And they have actual names. I just don't remember
The collector and the library ghost.
them. The
That's who
collector
they
and the
are.
library ghost. And so she has like this big collection of old rare books. And the collector's like, gimme.
They're mine now.
I want.
Snitch.
And so he can't just be like, stab, stab. I'm dead. You know.
As one does.
As
No,
one
can't
does.
do that. Can't do that. What?
I thought you were telling me I can't do that. And I was like,
No.
I can't just.
It's copying what you said.
I get. You're right. You can't do that. I was genuinely so confused. This is a great episode. So, this is the library ghost. It's murdered by her husband,
The
right?
dead ghost.
The dead ghost. So,
Oh, husband?
yeah, because he woos her. Because he can't just be stab, stab, these books are mine now. He has to get to know her so he can know where she keeps the nice
I don't
books.
appreciate the stabbing action at me right now. So just keep your
Stab, stab.
self on your side.
Sorry, I got excited. Ghostbusters. And so then that's why she's down there. And in the first movie, it's just she's just a ghost, right?
Mhm.
We just understand. But in the Ghostbusters video game, that's where we learn about the library ghost and how she was actually this very important woman in this library, and she was a boss lady. You know what? We've been swearing this whole time. She was a boss ass bitch.
Yeah.
And she like held everything down. She went on these explorations. She was like Indiana Jones. She went on, she was like, that belongs in a museum. That belongs in my library. Give. Respectfully.
For me.
Respectfully. And so the collector's like, stab, stab. And no one found her body for years. So one day they were like walking around at the bottom of this library and they just find her dead body. And they're like, oh, guess we found her. And in the video game, you see that she's caught in like this residual haunting, this endless cycle of she's sitting in a chair, she's reading her book, and then suddenly she's just letting out this blood-curdling scream. And then suddenly she's back just reading her book. And she's stuck in this loop of the moment that she's dying. Ghostbusters! Ah! It's so cool. We're only in like the first 10 minutes. But so they see they see the library ghost. And they're like, well, we don't know what to do. And they send Vinkman out. And Vinkman's like, hey, what's up? Can we, like, talk to you? And she's doing her good old library business. She's like, shh, dog, be quiet. We're in the library. And so he, like, walks around the corner and he's like, I don't know what to do, guys. And Ray, my sweet bean boy Ray, is like, okay, I got a plan, guys. And they, like, creep up and he's just like, get her. And they just
Yes, get her.
get her. And they're like, are just like gonna go like pounce on this ghost.
Can't touch her though.
Yeah, like okay. And so then you have a terrifying effect, stop motion effect of just like spooky ghost faced. They all scream, Ghostbusters. Which fun fact about that song is when they were doing their like montage of Ghostbuster things, that when they were like editing it together, they hadn't had the song made yet. And so they just were using I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis and the News. And if you listen to those two songs together, they're almost exactly the same. And I'm like,
Love it.
you know what? You saw you had something good, and instead of doing it, you just did it better.
Hell yeah.
I love the Ghostbusters so much. But another reason of Ghostbusters is that in the, like, they're like, okay, we're getting back to the paranormal thing. We're excited. We've got a lot of good things going on here. We just found actual evidence of a physical full body apparition. And as they get there, the college is like, okay, this is pseudoscience and we're shutting it down. This is, sorry, guy. And so
He wasn't sorry.
he was not sorry. He's like, I'm not sorry, my guy. Get out. And so these Ghostbusters are like just now out on the street. And so they're just like, okay, we're starting a business and we're busting ghosts. And my favorite thing is that we see very slice of life stuff. Like, we see them putting a mortgage out on Ray's house so that they can buy the firehouse that they're ghost busting in. And so it's like, my parents lived in that house. I grew up in that house. It's okay, Ray. Everyone has a second mortgage these days.
Everyone has a second mortgage.
Everyone has a second mortgage. And they're just like, I love it. And then when they're going through the firehouse, that's one of my favorite scenes. Because they're just like sitting there and they're talking about how terrible it is. It's an appalling place. And Ray's like, does fire pole still work? Ow! And he goes down the fire pole.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. This place is great. Can we sleep here tonight? I'll bring my stuff in. We'll have a sleepover. And another thing, why do they all sleep in the same room?
In case the ghosts come for them, I don't know.
Well, they do. Do you remember that part?
I do, yeah.
Ghost job. Oh my god, this movie is like fever dream. Ghostbusters. So, Dana, I don't remember her last name. Dana is like, hey, I got ghosts. And they're like, okay, we'll go check it out. Because earlier we saw a scene of like, she was at her apartment. She had just gotten home. Her weird neighbor Lewis, played by the incredible Rick Moranis, who is an angel and an icon, and I love him so much. She like gets home from her aerobics class because this is the 80s.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, set the X down on the counter, and suddenly they're just boiling on the counter. Just you know, eggs.
As eggs do.
As eggs often do. She, like, freaks out, and she hears, like, growling from her fridge. And she, like, opens her fridge, and there's a dog, and it says Zool.
Not a dog.
It's a dog.
It's a demon. Not a dog.
No, it's a demon dog. It's
okay, yeah, a demon dog.
In the original, fun fact,
Imagine a little crusty white dog.
Zool! Zool! Oh, just punted across the room. You're like, go away. Stop it. Don't kick dogs, though. Please don't. That's horrible. Barbara, stop kicking your dog. I'll come for you, Barbara. And your toes. Anyway.
Excuse me?
Cutting her toes off.
I don't want to touch on this. We're just gonna... Okay.
No, so...
Zool.
And so, in the original script for Ghostbusters, is not at all how Ghostbusters ended up. Because Dan Aykroyd, love him to death, is a weird little guy. He's a weird little guy. And so he was like, yeah, the Ghostbusters end up on another planet. Isn't that so cool, guys? That's my Dan Aykroyd voice. I don't know if you can tell. It's not so cool. Ghostbuster on another planet. And so the original thing is that those demon dogs, they were just going to be called Zool. And they were going to be the favorite pet of Gozer. And they kind of are in the movie. That kind of shows through. But they were like, yeah. And so the Ghostbusters stole one of the Zools. And so it was like, yeah. The whole thing was just Gozer getting his dog back. And, Ghostbusters. And so, yeah, and so they're, like, walking through. Vinkman's hitting on Dana. It's great. And so, where am I? Oh, the boys get their first job. The iconic quote of Janine yelling, "We got one!" And it's iconic. And so they get sent to the fancy schmancy Sedgwick Hotel. And so this is where they catch the Slimer, who is the iconic green Ghostbusters ghost.
Yep.
He...
Booger-looking
dude, exactly. He's a real slimy. Wow, imagine Slimer is slimy. No, so he was based off Jim Belushi. John Belushi?
I don't know who you're talking about.
The dude from Blues Brothers. He looks like my dad. I think it's John. I think Jim Belushi is the unfunny one. John Belushi, who is you? Yes, it's John Belushi. Kind of looks like my dad. So John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd were like besties. And so originally the role of Peter Venkman was being written for John Belushi. But then as like Dan Aykroyd was like writing lines for this character, for John Belushi's character, he got the phone call that John Belushi had just overdosed and died.
Oh.
And so they were like really close. They were essentially brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like he was like, well, this is a terrible thing, but like I gotta keep going.
Yeah.
And so now Bill Murray was in the character, and so he's like, okay, so the joke around set is that Slimer is the ghost of John Belushi. And there's this whole thing where it's like one could almost be offended because it's like, oh yeah, Slimer just eats a lot, is real gluttonous. But then it's like, but no, because that's just how they were. They were both heavier set guys, and so they would just like poke jabs at each other.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this great thing. But Ghostbusters, they're at the Cedric Hotel, and they're like hanging out. They're being besties. And my third favorite joke. How many jokes?
I don't know how many jokes you've said so far.
Ghostbusters so much.
I know you love it.
One of my favorite jokes from Ghostbusters. 3 of my favorite jokes from Ghostbusters happen in this hotel. Number 1, Egon's like scanning through. He like scans this dude. He's like scanning up his body, and he just gives him a good old poke to the shoulder, just checking if he's real. I love it. And then my second joke happens when they're like clearing out the dining room, and he's like they're like clearing out the tables because they need more space for the trap. And he's like, Bill Murray's character, Dr. Venkman, is just like, hold on, I've always wanted to try this. And he just like whips this thing off the table. He's like, and the flowers are still standing, folks. I love it. I love it so much. And then my third favorite joke in that scene is when they put the trap down, and they're like, okay, just don't look directly at the trap, whatever you do. And he like opens the trap, and immediately Egon's like, I looked at the trap, right? It's great. I want a sticker that just is the trap. It just says, I look at the trap, right? I love it. We're going to skip over some spots because this has been for forever. Talk about Ghostbusters for 23 minutes. So they get paid. And this is another one of my favorite Egon moments of all time, because this shows that Egon is really the dude in charge, right? Dr. Venkman Peter can put on all of this stuff. He can be like, yeah, I'm the main man. I've got this swagger. I'm charismatic. But then when it comes down to making like financial decisions with the dude in charge of the hotel, it'll be like, yeah, and that'll be, and he looks over at Egon, who holds up a very sly 4. It's just like, well, like scratching his chin, he's like 4. And Peter's like, $4,000. And with the trap fee, that'll be, and he looks over at Egon. Egon like just puts like a 1 up next to his nose, to, like itch his nose. The trap fee is a $1,000 fee. And it's like, really in that scene, we see that Egon is the one calling the shots. And I'm like, this man.
Egon is the greatest.
I love him so much. R.I.P. in peace, Harold Ramis. But then they hire Winston. Tell him about the Twinkie. That's a big Twinkie.
That's a big Twinkie.
Big old Twinkie. And then the Environmental Protection Agency shows up.
EPA.
The EPA. This is Walter Peck. And he shows up and he's like, hey, I need to see your containment unit. And so...
Excuse me?
And so they're like, no, fine, come back with a warrant. Screw you.
Yeah. It's reasonable.
Reasonable. And so Peck comes back. He's got the warrant. He's got the police. He's like, show me the frickin' containment unit. B. I've sworn too many times.
Watch yourself.
And so they're like sitting there and they're like, okay, this is my containment unit. Look at it go. Oh, isn't it so cool? And Walter Peck's like, okay, we got to turn this off. This is in direct violation of some code somewhere. And they're like, we got to turn it off. And the Ghostbusters like, home dog, if you turn that off, it's all going to hell. Right? This isn't going to be good. And so then they're like, I'm going to do it anyway. And so he turns it off, and all of the ghosts are released. And it's anarchy. And so that's great. And so they're like at the mayor's shown up. They get arrested. They're like talking about plans in the prison, which is another
Yep.
really good scene.
It was like everyone gathers around the blueprints.
It's because honestly, what else you got to do in the holding cell?
Exactly.
And they're just like they talk about Ivo Shandor, the architect who performed a lot of unnecessary surgeries. We're not sure what that means, but it's dark and it's fun and it's slightly spooky. But then they start talking about the Cult of Gozer, which they don't really go into in that movie, but I'm about to go into. I'm gonna go into it. I already apologized for the length of this episode. I'm not sorry. So the Cult of Gozer essentially is in the first movie. What we see it as is it is bringing the god Gozer into reality, and this is the choose the form of your destructor, all this stuff. And so Ivo Shandor is the head of this cult, right? And he built the building that Dana lives in. And that is like the epicenter of all of this paranormal malarkey that goes on. And so that's why Zool, the demon dog, shows up and says Zool in her fridge. And that's why the demon dog attacks Lewis at his party. He's the gatekeeper. She's the keymaster.
Mm-hmm.
She's the gatekeeper. He's the keymaster.
Oh, okay.
I said it backwards.
I didn't even realize.
I realized. And so this is Vince Clortho.
Vince Clortho.
He's the keymaster. There's Vince Clortho and Zool. That's just Dana. Dana's Zool. And so I don't remember why I was talking about them. Cult of Gozer.
Yeah.
And so they are like the right-hand mans of Gozer. They're here to connect they're here to connect and bring about, and they're like here to open the gate to Gozer, to let him in and destroy this world. They are a cult of destruction. They bring about Slimer in a way because there's like a publication of Tobin's Spirit Guide, which is the book that they talk about that like is all of their like ghost encyclopedia stuff. It's like, yeah, we'll consult the Spirit Guide. And in the Ghostbusters video games, they've digitized it and now it's Spengler's Spirit Guide. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's a cute little detail and I like it. But in Tobin's Spirit Guide, it talks about Slimer and how he was created by the cult. They talk about Slimer and how he was created by the Cult of Gozer. And he is not a ghost as we think of it, technically. None of the Ghostbusters ghosts really are, because when we think of ghosts, we think of like a dead human that's back.
Mm-hmm.
But so he is just an entity. He's a spirit. He's a gluttonous spirit whose hunger can't be satiated. Because as we see in Ghostbusters, it's played as a joke in that movie that because he's a ghost, everything goes through him, and he's shoving food down his gullet, and it's just florping right out of him.
Excuse me? Florping?
Yep. Technical terms. Food's just florping right out of him. And so then, like, but if you think about it, Slimer is cursed to be perpetually hungry. He's like, no matter how much he can eat, I know
he can't eat.
He can't, but
can't reach
Slimer.
the food.
Yeah, but in Slimer, as much as he can get his hands on food and put it in his mouth, he can't satiate his hunger.
Mm-hmm.
And so that takes like a goofy ghost that's like played for laughs and makes it creepy again.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, God, I love Ghostbusters. I think we're just going to have to talk about just the first Ghostbusters in this episode.
Just the first Ghostbusters.
We're bringing back in part 2, Ghostbusters 2, and then Ghostbusters 2016, and then the video games, and then
everything else.
Everything else. There's TV shows. There are TV shows. They're like animated Ghostbusters TV shows. I love Ghostbusters so much. They make Egon blonde for some reason. It's not a good look for him.
It makes me sad.
I know. It's not a good look on him. But Gozer shows up. Right? We're getting back on track. I'm tracking us back.
Track.
Gozer shows up. And he, kicks their door down. He doesn't. The gate opens very politely.
Yes.
And he's like, okay. I'm here now. And then we smash cut back to the jail because they were just talking about why everything's happening. And so they're like, okay, world's gonna end. About 5 minutes.
Yep.
And so they're in the mayor's office now.
Yep.
And they're trying to explain everything. And Peter's like, yeah, everything was going fine until Dickless the Clown over here decided to open up our containment unit. And the mayor looks at Peck and goes, is that true? And Peter goes, this is true. This man has no dick. And it's the greatest thing. One of my favorite jokes. One of my favorite jokes.
I like that scene because, there's just a priest in there.
Yes!
The priest telling him basically what to do.
It's just
right.
Okay, in the name of Jeebus, stop the ghosts.
Yeah, do that.
It's thank you, Father. What, is he a cardinal? Is
I
he
think
red?
So.
Is that what a cardinal means?
I don't know, I guess.
I don't understand church.
He's in charge of the New York Catholic churches. I don't
Okay.
I wasn't Catholic, so.
My dad was. Does that make
No, because you grew up Lutheran, so.
I know, I did. Then the mayor's like, okay, go bust these ghosts.
Go get them.
And they're like, aight, fam. Cool. And so they go up to the top of Dana's building, which has been completely rearranged because it's actually not the top of Dana's building, it's her fridge.
Yes.
But then it's outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole thing. Gozer.
All over the place.
And so Gozer comes out, and they're in the form of this hot lady, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, choose the form of your destroyer. Huh. And so the ghost first they ask they ask, are you a god? And Ray's like, no. And boom, bam, lightning.
Yeah. And everyone's like, someone asks you if you're a god, say yes.
Yes, I love that line. It's a great. I love Ghostbusters so much. And so then it's once again, it's choose the form of your destroyer, which obviously means that they get to choose what they're going to fight. Mm-hmm. So this implies that in some other timeline, someone was like, I'm a fight a hot lady. It's going to be great. And so that also kind of ties back to the original idea of Ghostbusters and portals, and now we're suddenly on another planet and this whole thing. And so they're all sitting there and they're like, don't think about anything. Keep your mind completely blank. And all of a sudden you hear, boom. Boom. And they're just like, who thought of something? I didn't think of anything. Did you think of something? And Ray's just sitting back there, my poor sweet little boy, and he's just like,
oh no.
And they're like, Ray, what did you think about? What did you think about? And he's like, I was just thinking about nothing. Suddenly marshmallows. And the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is puffing down the street. And I love Ray so much because it's that same thing of you try to think about nothing and your brain is just like nothing, marshmallows. It's like, no. And so they fight the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And earlier when they were at the Stanley Hotel, no, that's The Shining. When they were at the Sedgwick Hotel, they were like, yeah, we don't cross the streams because you will cease to exist. Mm-hmm. All of your particles will explode all at once. But then suddenly they're like, okay, you remember what I said about that?
Do it.
Completely disregard me. Do it.
Yep.
And so they're just like, okay, great. And so they schlorp the streams. They cross the streams. And they save the day. And it's great. And they're heroes. And look at them go.
Got marshmallow everywhere.
They got marshmallow everywhere. And then Lewis is born out of a thing.
Lewis is birthed again.
He is birthed again. And then another one of my favorite jokes is they're like, Lewis is like, whoa, how did I get here? This is crazy, man. I'm Rick Moranis. I'm America's sweetheart. And then Egon's like, you were just part of a very, very cool scientific thing. and Lewis is like, cool, who are you people? And Egon's like, we're the Ghostbusters. And he's like, you guys got a lawyer? Because Lewis is a lawyer, and I love him so much. He's like, oh no, it's like, who does who does your taxes or something.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I love him so much. And then in the second movie, they get sued by the state of New York.
Yep. That's the whole plot, basically, of the second movie.
So I'm being told that we have to do a part 2, 3, and 4 of
We're
Ghostbusters.
cutting it off here.
I'm being cut off. So this has been Of Goths and Goblins. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts if you feel like it. And if you want more BS from us, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Of Goths and Goblins. Thank you for listening. And remember, in the end, we all rot. You might as well embrace it.